Hey, this is Jordan from Jersey, and this is part 2 of what I thought of the comics I read the weeks of March 3rd and 10th, 2010. So here in part 2, we'll be discussing all the Marvel comics I bought over the last 2 weeks. If you want to see all the DC and indie titles, you can check them out in part 1. So let's start things off with Spider-Man Noir, Eyes Without a Face, issue 4 of 4. This is a very satisfying ending to what was a very good miniseries. If you have any interest at all in Marvel Elseworlds type books, check out both Marvel Noir Spider-Man books. They're very good. This one sets up a third, so I'm excited about that. And I really have nothing else to say. I've said it all in the last 3 reviews. Sorry. Next up, we have Cable, issue 24. This series is finally over. Yes, there is one more issue next week. That's Deadpool and Cable, issue 25. Hooray. At least it'll be different from this, I hope. I loved Cable and Deadpool as a series. It was great. This was not a good follow-up. If you're hoping that some nuggets of storyline that were really interesting and integral to the upcoming X-Men crossover would be found in the 24 issues of Cable Volume 3, I think it is, no, the answer is no. There were none. You can skip it. It was worthless. Maybe like 5 or 6 interesting things out of the whole 24-issue series, and the rest was just the same thing over and over and over again, and this conclusion does not change it. You can skip it. Whoop-de-doo. But you know what series you should not skip? That's the 12. The 12 is a 12-issue miniseries about 12 superheroes who were frozen in the 1940s during World War II, Captain America style. And they haven't been seen since, until they were thawed out last year. Now, the series put out 8 issues, as well as a couple of things like this. This is the 12 Spearhead, issue number 1, by the way. They put out 9 or 8 regular issues, plus this, I think another prequel, maybe a couple 0 issues. I think there was a 0 and a 0.5. You should check them out. They're very cool. Basically, these 12 superheroes that get frozen, they wake up, and they undergo pretty much what Captain America had to do with reacclimating himself to society, except you get to see 12 completely different reacclimations to society, how it affects different characters, how it affects them based on what's in their past, how the world has changed in, the 70 years since then, or 65 or whatever. It's very interesting. These are very different characters. Some have powers, some don't. Various backgrounds, various personalities. It is something that's very awesome. The only downside is they released 8 issues, and then it's been forever since we've seen anything. In the back of this book, it says issue number 9 is coming out soon. I can only hope that that is true and that we get a proper conclusion to the series, because it is very good. This is a prequel set during World War II. Lots of cameos, Captain America, Nick Fury, Howling Commandos, Dum Dum Dugan, all those. You should really check this out. Just as a prequel, you can get the first 6 issues in a hardcover or trade, I believe. At least a hardcover. Certainly worth your time if you like Watchmen, if you like anything that has to do with the passage of time and how that affects superheroes and superhero mythos and how the world would react to superheroes. You're going to like this series. It is incredibly excellent. Next up, we have Prelude to Deadpool Core, issues 1 and 2. Issue 1 focuses on Lady Deadpool, and unfortunately, just like in the crossover that showed you all those characters, it's drawn by Rob Liefeld. So that was a major detraction. It's not as terrible as it could be. This is not the worst I've seen of his art. The story was fine, I guess. But nothing great happened in this issue. Issue 2, somewhat better. It was Kid Deadpool. We got to see kid versions of the different X-Men. That was kind of fun. Some good one-liners. Nothing particularly memorable. Both of these seem to be following the pattern that we're introduced to these characters. They fight. Deadpool from our universe shows up and says, I need you to help save the world, and they jump back out, and then you're on to the next issue. Hopefully we get a little less formulaic over the next few issues. I believe the next one is Dogpool, and after that I forget. But, yeah, I like Deadpool. He's really oversaturated right now. These 2 books were certainly not the best he has to offer, but hopefully it gets better. At least it's not Cable at this point. And finally, for this episode, we have 3 issues of The Amazing Spider-Man. We have 622, we have 623, and we have 624, because 3 weeks ago the book didn't show up, and so I got 2 last week and 1 this week, and that's a lot of Amazing Spider-Man. This issue, 2 stories, one focusing on Morbius the Living Vampire, as shown on the cover, one focusing on Flash Thompson. The Morbius one was kind of fun. I wasn't really too gung-ho about it, because Morbius look at him. Yeah, it's kind of dumb. But that had a fun thing to do with his story. The art was very good, very retro, and we got some good Spider-Man not quite understanding the current vampire craze commentary that I liked. The second story in the book focused on Flash Thompson. About last fall, I think they had an awesome issue about Flash Thompson, what he went through fighting over in the Iraq War. I actually bought 2 copies. I have a friend of mine who is paralyzed partially, and I wanted to show him that issue because it really was heartfelt and a very good issue to give humanity to a character who often doesn't have it. I didn't think that this follow-up of him going through the stages of grief was quite as good. The art was good. It was very different from the first story, but I liked both. The story was fine. I almost kind of wish they had ended his story with that one single issue starring him last year. Almost because it was a jumping the shark moment. Jumping the shark, by the way, does not mean this is the low point of something. Jumping the shark means that it's the highest point that a show, generally it's used for TV shows, can get to. So when people say jumping the shark to mean something they didn't like, they're using it wrong. I thought that was a jumping the shark moment in that you could never get a better story for Flash Thompson, and I think this kind of proves that. Anything after this, it doesn't take away from that story. It was a very good story, but it just can't live up to how good that story was. So it was a fine backup story, but I almost think they should have just left that character in his own corner from now on, just because that last story was so good. So check out that one for sure. This issue was also good, but it actually wasn't that consequential to the overall Gauntlet storyline. So if you're only picking up certain storylines, you can probably skip this issue. 623 and 624. I really like this cover, by the way, with the Kirby dots and the Vulture there. Both issues focus on the new Vulture, a character who, when he was first introduced, I thought was incredibly dumb. They do their best to humanize him in these 2 issues, give him a backstory, and I think it works to an extent. I certainly don't dislike him as much as I did before. I don't like the way he looks, though. He's just not a very well-designed character, in my opinion. The art in these 2 issues, it's, I'm pretty sure, the same exact artist as the Electro arc 3 months ago. Electro actually shows up in the first issue to break Vulture out of prison. I think the art's fine. I think he looks better in these issues than he did when we were first introduced to him. I'm still not giant on the character. In issue 2 of the 2, so 624, this is the issue where, oh no, Peter Parker's getting fired from the Daily Bugle. I like this issue better than 623. 623 was kind of met about. This issue I like overall. I thought it was a pretty good issue, except there was something at the back of my mind. He got fired for plagiarizing a photo with Photoshop or, some clone in the comic verse. And I was like, man, it was a good story, although A, I don't think he would do that. It seems out of character for him. And B, where have I seen that before? They took that from something. And then someone pointed out to me, oh, Sin Eater. That's how Eddie Brock got fired from the Bugle, way back when Venom was first introduced. And then I heard today on a podcast somebody bring into the fact that that's exactly how it happened, Photoshop-wise, in Spider-Man 3. I actually like Spider-Man 3 more than most people, but I've only seen it once. I have it on DVD. I've never watched it. But yeah, as well as I remember it, that was exactly how Eddie Brock got fired. So that seems out of place. It didn't seem like something Spider-Man would do or Peter would do. And generally, I don't harp on that because they're characters. You just let it go. But it did seem out of place. I don't like how they're getting to where they got. But I think it'll be a good place, an interesting place to see Peter with no job and a terrible reputation now in the newspaper industry and what he's going to do with that. Whew. Well, that's it for the comics that I read the last 2 weeks. Once again, I'm sorry they were so late. Hopefully it won't happen again. It was just busy with school and family these past 2 weeks. And now I've got to go record my Lost video before next week's shows. So have a good week. Don't forget, subscribe to my YouTube videos. I'd really appreciate it. Tell your friends, and I'll see you next week. Rocco, this is your shout out.